All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well. So, folks, today we're going to talk about old Danny Masterson. I'm sure everybody saw, but he was sentenced to 30 years to life. That's a lot. Then we're going to talk about Scientology, because what I feel like we're witnessing right now in real time is Scientology, an extremely rich, powerful, successful cult, entering into its final chapter, which is not something you get to see every day. It's a long, bizarre, brutally abusive slog to get to this point for a cult of this magnitude. Scientology's been going for 70 years, and just recently does it feel like the winds are finally starting to change. The wheels are starting to shake, the seams are starting to creak, civil lawsuits are raining down like alien souls into the volcano. Children that grew up their entire lives in Scientology are now adults, and they're going, wait, what? What? I was treated terribly that whole time. That's not legal. I'm going to sue. Not only are top-ranking members defecting, but they're starting podcasts and YouTube channels and Substack accounts and have dedicated their lives every day to cranking out Scientology content with its deepest, darkest secrets, which, man, Scientology's come a long way. Just 10 or 15 years ago, not all that long, a major publication, maybe Times or People, one of them, put out a negative story on Scientology, and Scientology spent millions of dollars to deal with just that one story. Fast forward a quick 10 years, not only are all the major publications cranking out negative stories, you have people like David Miscavige's right-hand man, the top guy, has left the church and is starring in documentaries. Yeah, let me show you where this happened. Appearing on podcasts. I'll tell you another deep, dark secret. The whole thing is collapsing. And so, if this is the final chapter, one has to ask the question, how is it going to end? Because out of all the genres of stories, cult stories have some of the bleakest, most dismal endings of any of them. It's going to be really interesting to see how it finally plays out. It's going to be a long final chapter. Scientology has a lot of money and nothing about it is going to happen quick. But I would say when it's all said and done and they start putting out documentaries from the very beginning to the brutal end, say the documentary's an hour and 40 minutes, I would guess where we are right now in the story is about an hour and 20 minutes in. But we'll see. Let's talk about Danny Masterson. He was charged with 3 counts of forcible rape. The first trial was last November. It was chalked up as a mistrial, hung jury. The big difference to the second trial is the judge allowed the victims to say, he drugged me and raped me. The drugging part had to be left out of the first trial. In the second one, it was allowed in, and he was found guilty of 2 of the 3 rape charges. When they announced the guilty verdict, his wife wailed audibly. That's a curveball it's hard to see coming, right? You think your life's going great. You're a pretty successful model, actress. You're married to a pretty successful actor. You're living in California. You're living a life that's probably better and more comfortable than 95% of all humans to ever live on the earth. You think everything's going great. The California sun is shining. Oh, look, a palm tree. And then all of a sudden, whamola, your husband is charged with 3 counts of forcible rape, gets convicted of 2 and sentenced to 30 years to life. Life comes at you fast. She, the wife, filed for divorce 2 days ago. Pretty wild stuff. And then in the couple days right after the sentencing, the story became Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. They had written letters thinking only the judge was going to see them, and they were made public. And instead of just owning it, we wrote a couple letters. We've known Danny for a really long time. We're shocked and disgusted by everything that's come out, but we know a lot of different parts of his personality, and we thought the judge should too, or they should have just not said anything. I thought their apology video was more bizarre than their letters. The letters were essentially, He never did drugs. He was always sober, and because of that, we didn't do drugs because he didn't do drugs. It's like, all right, great. So he's a sober rapist. Whoop-de-doo. Good for him. Thanks for writing the letters. They should have just owned it, but then they did the bizarre scripted apology where they're going, history will show that we have always supported victims. Did we get it? And kind of off topic, but Ashton Kutcher has popped up during 3 weird cultural moments. The first one, remember the We Work story, which is essentially the same as the Elizabeth Holmes Theranos story or the Billy McFarlane Fire Festival story? Another CEO, Adam Newman, that thought he was a visionary. I'm a tech visionary, everybody. Started the company WeWork, which was an office space rental company, but he was telling everyone, we're a tech company, we're a social media company. We created this social media app where everybody's talking and having fun and it's vibrant, and then you meet people on the app and then you rent space from the WeWork building, and everybody's in there, and it's vibrant, and everybody's inspired by each other and getting stuff done, and it's productive, and it's amazing. And the valuation of the company was skyrocketing. Wow, this is really good. But it's like a Theranos Elizabeth Holmes thing. In reality, nobody was using their app, the stupid social media app. And very few people were enjoying renting the office space. And if they did rent office space, they rarely went back, and there wasn't this vibrant community of people helping each other, and the whole thing started falling apart, and the valuation was tanking. And when the whole thing is crumbling down, the CEO does an interview, legendary interview in the docu-series about WeWork. This interview is one of the, oh man, moments. And Adam Newman, the CEO, looks terrible, looks like he hasn't slept in weeks, and the whole thing's crashing down, and he's going, we're good, it's a great company, and you should still invest in it. Well, who's sitting next to him saying, I have a lot of money invested in it, and it's still a good investment. Trust me, it's Ashton Kutcher. A story crazy enough to have multiple documentaries and docuseries made of it, and one of the big moments of the whole thing, there's Ashton Kutcher. And then fast forward, I think it was February 2021, a woman gets murdered whose fingerprints are on the doorknob. There he is again. Ashton Kutcher pops up. I don't know much about that case, but I remember Ashton testifying with a mustache, and he tells the story that he heard she got murdered, and he realized, my fingerprints are on the doorknob. I better call the police. Again, that's a strange time. There he is again. And then all of a sudden, here we are again. Danny Masterson, a high-profile cult member that raped not as high profile cult members, and that's when the cult Scientology was at its zenith, its peak power, had total control over all of its people, and so they were able to sweep the whole thing under the rug. You weren't raped. It's your fault that you're a victim. Just go do an audit. You'll be fine. You're a sad victim. You must have done something to bring that upon yourself. So we'll just go do an audit. Don't go to the police for sure, because he's a very important member of Scientology, and this will all go away. Well, now when they're not at their peak power and they don't have power over all of their people, and it's things that happened at their zenith are now starting to rear their ugly heads 20 years later, and it's all going down. Here's Ashton Kutcher again, the best friend of the cult rapist dude, the guy he connected with the best his whole life. Ashton Kutcher, there he is, popping up again. I get strange energy from Ashton Kutcher, but it's kind of funny. All right, so let's talk about David Miscavige. He's going through interesting court. He's going through his own lawsuit craziness right now. He's currently in Florida, and his whole life is hiding from process servers for a federal child trafficking civil lawsuit. And in Florida, it's the law, you have to physically serve someone. Are you David Miscavige? Yeah, you've been served. Well, it's pretty easy for David Miscavige to hide from the process servers because you just go from one gated Scientology neighborhood to the gated compound, back to the gated neighborhood. You just get in a car, the gate opens, he drives out, he probably has a driver, drives him to the compound, it closes, there's office space, but he has multiple houses and apartments in all of the office buildings, and it's not too hard for him to avoid the process servers. Well, there's a loophole. The judge said, even though in Florida you have to physically serve them, if the person, David Miscavige, is purposely hiding their location and dodging the servers have officially tried to serve him 27 different times. The judge said, I'm making a ruling. He has been officially served, even though they weren't able to actually do it. He knows it's coming. He's hiding on the gated Scientology compound. He's officially served. Those gated Scientology neighborhoods are eerie places because the grass is clipped and the bushes are trimmed, and there's no flaking paint on any of the houses, and there's no oil stains on the driveways, but there are spikes on the sinister-looking fence that encages everything in with motion sensors and floodlights and cameras and the whole thing. And it's, welcome to this nice Scientology neighborhood where everybody is happy and free to leave. Would you like to do an audit? So wild places. They also have some movie production properties, golden era movie production. I love the look that of all of their movies, and it almost looks like they decorate everything with the same aesthetic as the Oscars, very glamorous and over the top, but they want to even go one step above the Oscars. We're Scientology, but it comes off as sleazy, almost like a movie North Korea would come out with. But I love the aesthetic of all their infomercials and movies that they come out with. I was thinking, how would I describe the aesthetic? And I would say it's sleazy dystopian glamour. And then I was thinking, how good would a sleazy dystopian glam rock band be? I might have to start one. But the gated properties, they really do have a sinister look and feel to them. Even though the sun is shining and the birds are chirping, it's like, why are there spikes on all of the fences? And I watched a documentary. It's good. It's called My Scientology Movie. It's the Louis Theroux documentary. But Louis Theroux and an ex-high-ranking member go out to one of those neighborhoods, and they're looking around, and they're looking at the fences and the spike, and the old high-ranking member, he's describing, he goes, this is for if someone comes and tries to climb the fence and get out, it'll ring an alarm, and the lights will come on, and they'll get him. Which I thought that was interesting. He didn't say, yeah, they have to have the spikes up because the pesky teenagers, because it's a Scientology property, want to climb the fence and get in. His immediate answer was like, no, that's to keep people in the church. And there's a wild story of a woman leaving. They had non-Scientology members at the neighborhood to shoot something. They needed help with something. She hid in one of the trunks of their car, and then the guy, not knowing she was in there, drove 2 hours from the property, and then all of a sudden, can you imagine, pops the trunk. Oh my gosh, she's in there. She's like, sorry, I wanted to escape. Terrible, sinister things are happening, and it's all enclosed with a fence with spikes on it. So anyway, David Miscavige, I was thinking, I wonder if he has a chip on his shoulder, because he's not even, unlike all the other cults that I've really done a big deep dive into, he's not the one that came up with the whole thing. It was L. Ron Hubbard in the 50s, and then for the past 37 years, David Miscavige took over, but I wonder if he has a chip on his shoulder because he's not the one that came up with Diagnetics, where everyone is going, wow, this thing that came from your brain has really affected all these people. David Miscavige is just the manager of the whole thing for the past 37 years. And the allegations that David Miscavige has become more and more deranged and abusive and violent are overwhelming. Everybody that comes out basically goes, David Miscavige, he has punching bags where it's he has a right-hand man or an assistant or something where their whole entire job is once David Miscavige starts to lose his temper, he has somebody to punch and kick and say, you know what your problem is? You believe your own shit. And another hilarious thing about David Miscavige, one, he's 5'3", so that could be a reason for all of the rage. And he didn't start the thing, so maybe he thinks no one even thinks I'm a special leader because I wasn't the one that came up with the whole thing. And he's growing angrier and angrier over the years, and more top-level defectors go out and spill all of his deepest, darkest secrets, and he's getting angrier. And two people, one is Marty Rathburn, who was one of the top ranking members for 20 years, and then another guy, I can't remember, but at two different times people are talking to these people that spent a lot of time with David Miscavige, and they're asking him essentially, what does it sound like when David Miscavige dresses someone down, or when he gets mad and he starts yelling at people? Both of them, they could have said anything in the world. They both thought about it for a second. What would he say? And both of them mentioned that he calls everyone a cocksucker. Which, if you could say two different people at two different times that could have said anything in the world, for them both to say that means that's probably one of his favorite phrases, which is hilarious to me because he's 5'3", he gets really angry, he calls everyone a cocksucker. You know what your problem is, cocksucker? You believe your own shit, don't you? And he has these punching bags that he uses. One guy in that My Scientology movie tells a story where he was going to film, he was in Scientology, and he was going to pitch an infomercial about Scientology to David Miscavige. And the guy said, David Miscavige beat me up like 5 different occasions. And one of them was this one where he goes in, it's an office room, big table, bunch of other people are in there, and he's pitching David Miscavige on this idea for an infomercial, and David Miscavige hates the idea. And he's getting angry, and all of a sudden he pops up onto the table, and everyone's like, what the hell? And he launches himself at this guy and just beats him up. The guy said he's small, but he's muscular, and he's punching him and beating him up, and he leaves the guy a beaten up pile on the ground and then storms out of the room, and everyone's going, get up, you don't want to make him wrong by laying there and going, he really hurt me. So it just shows you, everyone says, get up, and he pops up like, oh God, what just happened? And so where does all of this violence and anger from David Miscavige come from? And I think this is why I always recommend the Louis Theroux, My Scientology, that movie, because it makes a decent point where Scientologists really pride themselves on being able to stand on their own 2 feet, and if a situation gets heated or somebody starts yelling at them or insulting them or whatever it is, they can hang in that moment. They don't melt. They don't start holding their breath. They don't start stammering their words. They really pride themselves when things get heated and loud and a little bit stressful, that they can hang in, which isn't a bad quality by any means. And one of the major exercises that you do as you're moving up the bridge to total freedom, that's what they call it in Scientology, one of the most famous exercises that plays into that is called bull baiting, which how bull baiting works is you sit down with a partner. So say it's me and you, and we sit down across from each other just like this, and we're looking at each other, and then I go, start. Everybody hates you. You're failing your family and yourself. You should be way further in life than you are right now. It's because you're lazy. You're ugly, you're lazy, you're untalented. Everybody knows that everything you've gotten you don't deserve. Your family's ashamed of you. You really should be doing way better than you are in life. So I sit there and basically insult you, and I try to get you to have a reaction. While I'm doing this, your family hates you. They don't like you. You failed at everything. While I'm saying stuff like that, you sit there and try to just be as stoic and expressionless as possible. And if while I'm going, you suck at your job, you suck at being a family person, everyone hates you, while I'm doing, if something I say affects you a little bit and there's a reaction, then we hone in on that and I just hammer on that topic, like your wife's gonna leave you. everyone hates you over and over again until you're desensitized to it. You've heard it all before, and then you can sit there and take a little shit and then say you're good at handling the verbal stuff and you're not affected by it. Maybe I flinch at you, or I go like this in your face, or I do a jump type scare. So it's that type of stuff too. And then in theory, if it's somebody with a good disposition that really was working with you to try to help you and not an abusive, bitter someone that's using the exercise to abuse you in a way, if it's ideally the right situation, you could see how after doing that for a while, it might help someone that's really timid, that if things get confrontational, they kind of melt or they start stuttering or whatever it is, to desensitize some of that stuff. That's what Scientologists really pride themselves on, is being able to handle a situation and look you into the eyes. It comes off as a little bit formulaic and weird, but they all have that look, and I can handle it, and you're not going to rattle me. I've heard it all before. Okay, so it's pretty easy to make the connection. Well, if everybody in Scientology is doing that exercise, even the people that never even get to see David Miscavige, you would think that David Miscavige, with the Sea Org, the people that the top ranking members that he hangs out with that are around him, I think he started in his head to be like, well, I'm going to up the bull baiting. So yeah, you got to take a little punch to the mouth, not like the sissies outside of Scientology that have really become kind of puny and weak. Us Scientology, we can still take a punch to the keister or an insult. And so he's, I think in his head, upped it for the Sea Org, and where kind of the whole thing ended, where the whole thing ended up is a place called The Hole, which is down in the basement of one of the Scientology buildings, and it's cement walls, and all of the windows are barred, and there's a security guard so no one can leave. And David Miscavige sentences people. Oh, you messed up on day-to-day stuff? You're sentenced to The Hole. And so you got to go down there and say there's a bunch of people, everyone's been sentenced down there, you work for the church, and then David Miscavige comes down there, and it really turns into some bleak, mean, abusive. He's making people do demeaning, embarrassing things. He's screaming at everybody, you know what your problem is, cocksucker. He's calling everybody a cocksucker. He's punching and slapping. And what I think that whole scene, and where it ended up in a cement cell in the basement called The Hole, with little David Miscavige raging and yelling at everyone and demeaning them and embarrassing them. I think what we are looking at, or the people that have seen it, is David Miscavige has had wild power for the last 37 years over this organization that he ended up with. That's a crazy story, a crazy life to live. You join Scientology, you're going, and then L. Ron Hubbard, the weirdo that started it, dies, and all of a sudden it's David Miscavige, and he's, thank you for coming to this very important briefing. Well, now fast forward 37 years, he has had power for 37 years, the type of power that's like, no, don't go out to the police. We deal with everything internally. And human beings, it's pretty much proven, a lot of scientific studies and research, humans can't handle that type of power. And he's had it for 37 years. And what does it look like now? Him raging and abusing people in a concrete cell with bars on the windows, screaming and punching and stamping his little foot. I don't know if he wears his little Navy outfit during that or what, but completely crazy stuff. And he's going through these federal child trafficking lawsuits right now. At what point is it going to switch to a criminal charge? It seems crazy to think about right now, but I really do think all of a sudden, maybe years, something is going to be the legal straw that breaks the camel's back, and everything's really going to start rolling. And how crazy would it be to see David Miscavige in a courtroom facing criminal charges? There he is, David Miscavmeister. Where you been, brother? Have you been on gated Scientology properties hiding from your lawsuits? Well, welcome back, man. Now you can be out. It's all over. No more hiding. You can go to the Mexican restaurant. You don't have to hide in the gated compound anymore. Crazy stuff. But just to end, let's talk about some other cults that have come and gone, had the very beginning all the way to the bleak, dismal end, and talk about what happened when they were at their most powerful, what led to the final chapter, and how it finally ended. So let's talk first about Jim Jones's People's Temple. I got a couple, the cult stories that have stayed with me, I'm going to tell right now. So Jim Jones and the People's Temple, it was different than Scientology, and also similar to Scientology is Nexium, Keith Raniere's Nexium, which if you've never gone down the Nexium wormhole, you got your afternoon planned out. But we'll talk about it too. But Nexium and Scientology, they're both cults where you work your way up through the bridge, and you got to take classes and workshop and intensives, and you work your way up through the whole thing. The problem with that is inevitably it's a total road to nowhere. It's hard to come up with a health and wellness, and it's hard to come up with an entire plan. It takes 20 years, the whole thing. It takes $100,000 in 20 years of time, and not to have the person finally get done with it and it be a total letdown. It's hard to come up with that program because you don't want someone to go 20, 30 years through the whole thing and then get done and then tell everyone, it was a big scam. I paid all of my money. I don't have any retirement money now. I paid $200,000 for a bunch of books and movies, and I took all the classes and all the programs, and I got the whole thing. All right, I'm done. And they're like, yep, you're clear now. You're free from all past experiences and free from anything that would bother you. You did it. It's like, well, I don't feel any different. Now I feel anxiety that I gave you all my money. I don't have anything for retirement now. I gave you all my money. And David Miscavige is just like, well, that's too bad. But you are done and you're clear and you should have a good life now. Then I was picturing, it's like the whole thing, it's a 20-year slog. You finally pay all your money, you do everything, and you're done. And David Miscavige just goes, well, that's it for you. Jumps up on the table, farts in your face, and boots you out the door. Later, cocksucker. Slams it behind you. You're sitting there like, how did this happen? But I think Jim Jones's People's Temple, a strength was he didn't have the intricate systems of classes and intensives that you have to work your way through and pay money. What he did was, it was half like Southern Bible Christianity preaching, and then half socialism utopia, which was kind of smart because instead of working your way through the road to nowhere program, the goal was just, we're going for the socialist utopia, which disillusionment is a big problem in churches. Even if you convince everybody you're special for a few years, 10 years, 15 years, eventually they're gonna see you for who you really are. But in Jim Jones's case, it was okay because as people started to say, oh, Jones isn't even that special. All right, he can organize, he can preach, he can deliver a hell of a sermon, whip everybody up into a frenzy, but he's just a guy. But the reason people still stayed in People's Temple and still stayed so devoted is because even once they were disillusioned with Jim Jones, they were still going for the cause, which is the socialist utopia. All right, so Jim Jones isn't as great as we thought he was. We are still going for the same cause. And Jim Jones was smart in having both of the like Bible-heavy type speeches and then the social justice, socialist utopia type speech, because if he was delivering a sermon down south and the conservative South, he would deliver a real Bible thumper of a speech, and he'd let the socialism stuff kind of just hang in the back, not bring it up. But if he was delivering a speech in California and Jane Fonda and her husband are there, all of a sudden the Bible stuff gets pushed to the back. He might even throw the Bible on the floor or on the table and say, the social justice issues are what's really important, and everybody cheers. But a hilarious story is one night Jim Jones misread his audience, or he was killing so hard and had everybody wrapped around his finger so much he thought, like it was a very like Bible type speech at first, but everybody was really into it, and he thought, all right, I think that they can handle the socialism stuff. And so at the peak, he's going, and that's why we should all be communists. And it was like, the needle fell on the record, and everybody in the audience was like, wait, what? And the person, he was doing a speech in some other church. The leader of that church came up and said, you need to leave. And Jim Jones was like, uh-oh. Told all of his people, because he'd bring a bunch of his members too to fill up the house and have everybody scream, we gotta go. And he was out. But I think it really helped the length of how long People's Temple went on for by not having the, all right, you got to take this class and then see you move up the little chart to this one. Because eventually, even 10, 20, 30 years, however long it takes to go up your road to nowhere, eventually people are going to get there, and then you don't want the word to get out. So I think it was a strength for People's Temple to say, the cause. We're going for the cause, even if you're disillusioned with me, Jim Jones, we're still going for the cause. I'm just a guy going for the cause. And what really got Jim Jones, though, is he started having sex with everybody. And it's the classic cult leader where someone else in the cult comes up to somebody and goes, you know, you got this weird block sexually. And the person's going, what? I do? I don't think I got a block sexually. No, you have a sad, pathetic block sexually, but that's okay. The cult leader is going to do you a solid, is going to have sex with you and help you shake this block so you're not so sad and prudish and you can get through it. And the person's going, I don't think I have any problems. And then all of a sudden they're having sex with the cult leader. But this one, Jim Jones picks the young, beautiful member that just joined or whatever, and he makes up a reason that they have to have sex. Well, they have sex for 5 years. And the girl, after 5 years of having this relationship with Jim Jones, she more than anyone knew he's not special, he's not a god, the son of God, whatever he's at times claimed, he's just a guy. So that started to really disillusion people. He started having sex with everybody. He spitefully impregnated one of the top members who he was kind of friends with. He impregnated his wife just needlessly. And it's stuff like that slowly ended the whole thing. Also, Jim Jones got to the point where he was on amphetamines and uppers all day and then downers all night to land the plane. And he's wearing dark sunglasses inside, completely drugged to the gills. And that's when it's really that last chapter stuff. All right, but let's talk about Nexium, the fake it's pretty much an exact copy of Scientology, except Scientology has the sci-fi movie part to it and kind of the wannabe military part to it. Nexium's the exact same, but instead of the sci-fi and the wannabe military part, it's all a health and wellness pyramid scheme where you, at the end, you become a sex slave. So just like Scientology, they have where you go if you're having, I don't know, I just don't think I want to have sex with the cult leader. Okay, go and do an audit. They call it EM in the Nexium cult. Okay, go do an EM. This is just a problem that you had. You're all stifled up for whatever reason. It's don't trust the feelings that you have. They're not real. You'll go and do an EM. But so as you're working up in the Nexium cult, at the beginning, it looks like a health and wellness retreat. And you're going, oh, I don't know, I feel a little bit better. I was talking to someone about some past trauma, which a lot of these cults, that's how they get people. A lot of times when something is really horrible and there's nothing else you can do, just talking to someone about it can help a lot. So all of a sudden you're talking to someone from the Nexium cult about this trauma you had, and you make a little connection and it feels a little bit better, and you're going, all right, I'll go to that. And then you go to another one. Then you pay money to go to another one. Then you pay money to go to another one. And all of a sudden your money's gone, you're exhausted, you're not really moving up in the thing. And then finally, when you're at your wit's end, I've paid all my money, I've gone to all the programs and weekend retreats and everything I could possibly do, and I'm not moving up in the cult. What the heck is going on? Then a Nexium member waits for you to be in that spot, and they say, listen, we can tell there's something not quite, you're not letting go, you're not being the best version of yourself. So we have a special program for you, and I think it's just what you need. And the person who's run ragged and poor and tired and just ready for anything goes, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And then they would become a slave, which it was a pyramid scheme of slaves. And so say, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I would have to wake up every day to the person that invited me in that just said, I got a program that will help you. This is what you are really missing. I'd have to say, good morning, master. And they'd say, good morning, slave. And most of them were women. And the collateral that they would insist on, like, you need to give us collateral because we are into some top secret, we are into some very top level stuff, and we can't have people going off and telling everyone what we have going, so we need collateral. So they had 2 types of collateral that they could give every week or month or however often it was. They could write up, address it to the media like Dear New York Times, and then put a horrible family secret or something about their parents, something that would blow up and be the news. Dear New York Times, my mother in 1986 did this, and it would totally ruin our family if it ever got out. Then they'd make you notarize it, and you'd have to give that once a month. Or if you didn't want to do the crushing family secret, what they would do is you would have to take a close-up picture of your vagina with your face in it, smiling. So one of the women, poor lady, she's telling a story where she was driving one day, and you still have to work your full-time day job. All this cult stuff was on top of it, so you're exhausted. She was driving, and she gets a text, send me a close-up picture of your vagina with your face in it, with you smiling. And she's going, oh, shoot. All right, well, I'm driving right now. So, well, send it now. Pull over. Okay. And so she pulls over and pulls down her pants and takes a picture and closer. Okay. Closer. Why isn't your face in it? Why aren't you smiling? Smile more. Smile more. It's like, okay, God. And so you're waking up. Good morning, master. You're taking the pictures. You're sending the family secrets. And how Nexium ended up in that final chapter and then totally falling apart is they branded women right here with Keith Raniere's initials, which, let me just say, Keith Raniere, the cult leader from Nexium, he has to be the most uncharismatic, just unimpressive cult leader I've ever seen. All the other ones, you can see glimpses of like, all right, I see the little charisma, or I see kind of how they were able to do it. With Keith Raniere, he's unimpressive looking. None of his ideas are like, all right, that's pretty smart. Nothing. He's got to be just overall one of the most unimpressive men I've ever seen in my life. And so he has his pyramid scam sex cult going. They brand people in this weird ceremony, and then those people leave. It becomes a big news story. The branding was the straw that broke the camel's back in this one, because they could be on the cover of the magazine with that brand, and it starts to all fall apart. Allison Mack, who starred in the show Smallville, she was another big piece of Nexium because she played the role of, she's the cute, spunky girl. So at all of the Nexium classes and events, she's there looking happy and charismatic, and all the other young women that are joining Nexium are going, oh, I want to be as free and cool as Allison Mack. And then Allison Mack's the one that's like, sorry, now you have to sleep with Keith Raniere to pass the weird sexual block that you have. Of course, it's for you. The cult leader's doing you a favor, right? But anyway, as it's all crashing down and Keith Raniere knows that he's going to be arrested and the branding story is out, he bolts to Mexico and invites it's top-level DOS, like the highest-ranking members, his sex slaves, he invites them down to Mexico. And I always think that'd be a weird trip to get that call from Keith Raniere. It's all happening. I'm down in a hotel room in Mexico. Get all of the top-ranking members and meet me there for a top-secret meeting. And you're on the plane headed down to Mexico thinking, I've dedicated 20 years of my life to Nexium. I've taken all the classes. I've spent all my money. And now here I am, a top member heading to Mexico to see the leader. I wonder if he's going to give me the last piece of advice or the key to success and happiness. I wonder if this is the big moment where we will be enlightened. And then they go into the hotel room in Mexico, and Keith Raniere demanded a group blowjob. Kind of anticlimactic. You thought you were going to get the key to happiness, and in reality he goes, this whole thing ended and I'm going to need a blowjob. And then Mexican SWAT team booted down the door and kicked the gate with rifles out and arrested him. And the Alex Mack, the Smallville, she got like 3 or 4 years. She just got out of prison in the last couple months, which seems quick. The Nexium, the whole thing collapsed in 2018, and she's already out of prison. That seems quick, but Keith Raniere got 122 years. Wild. And one Nexium story that has really stayed with me is they all lived, or a lot of the top-ranking members, in dingy townhomes in Ithaca, New York, and they only got 500 calories, so they were malnourished and looked terrible, and they didn't get to sleep that much because of all the work, so they were exhausted. And Keith Raniere, the unimpressive, short, not that great looking, not that smart, not that charismatic leader, would play volleyball at 3 a.m. in the morning in an old dingy gymnasium. And he would invite all of his cult members, and they would go, and they would be in the sickly green light of a gymnasium at 3 in the morning. They're starving, they're already exhausted, and they're wildly cheering for this unimpressive Keith Raniere as he pretends to be a good volleyball player. There's stories like that in these cults that I just will probably remember for my whole life. Think about being in one of those gyms at 3 a.m. in the morning, and a short, unimpressive man is playing volleyball, and he can't even really jump, and he's not doing anything cool whatsoever, and you're wildly cheering, yeah, Keith, you're so good. And it's just wild stuff. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is Heaven's Gate cult, which could be, in a way, the most dismal one of them all, because what was his name? Marshall Applewhite. He went by Doe. His whole thing, he was the leader, was they wanted to overcome everything of what it means to be a human being. And there's sadness in that. Everything that makes up a human being, they wanted to overcome and deny. And then once you deny all of that, then you're ready to go to the level, the evolutionary level above human, the level of heaven. And he claimed that he actually was Jesus Christ. Not the same body, but the same brain and mind that were in the Jesus Christ from 2,000 years ago. That same brain and mind is in his head now. And if you can believe that or not, it's up to you, he would always say. And their whole thing is to overcome everything that makes you human: sex, love for your family, love for your kids, goals, whatever it is. As soon as you're past and have overcome all of those, then you're ready to go. Everybody knows they all committed suicide, or, you could say that they were murdered, but he did a bunch of videos that are on YouTube. Watch those, where he's going, the scariest part of him was the scariest part of that cult to me is he's saying, you have to do whatever your elder member wants. Your whole life is to serve the elder member. So I'm serving my Father up in heaven, and they have to serve me, talking about his members. And one of the messed up stories for that one is he convinced a couple of his members to fly down to Mexico and get neutered, get castrated. And then the guy that gets castrated gives an interview. I feel so much better, and I'm ready to go on to my next, chapter in life. And they all went out with the group suicide. So totally wild stuff. I'm going to cut it off there. We're going to follow on this channel Scientology's final chapter, because at some point the wheels are going to start coming off and it's going to be insane. I love you all. I'll see you next time. Why? Stivin' why? Shamita.